Sixth Army has the satanic hexagram within a circle with the satanic anarchy A inside of it, and a lot of their staff are Satanists. This is some more sites around the area used for programming. This is on the Presidio where the Illuminati have had some rituals inside of there, and in the distance here is Alcatraz, which has been used for ritual programming. This is Tavistock, which is a site that's been used for mind control programming. Rothschilds have used Tavistock quite a bit. Here's a couple programmers. This is Michael Aquino, who's head of Temple Asset. He's a mind control programmer. And I don't think that he's got his staff in his hand there in the picture, but he oftentimes carries a staff. That's staff is like a cattle prod, and it will give you electroshock. There's been quite a few books coming out recently about the mind control, but they're all pretty vague. So I encourage you to get the Volume 2 book that we have, and the title to it's the Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave. Now, how are they doing this? Well, they're using natural things, natural functions of the brain. Some of you have probably been driving along the road and you've been talking to your wife and just driven automatically. See, the mind can work in two different things. What you're doing is you're hypnotically trancing out on your driving. Maybe some of you have been driving and you went from point A to B and don't even remember driving. You just put yourself into self-hypnosis. There's different altered states that the mind can go into, and they're very familiar with these. The mind also has the ability to disassociate. You know, if you say, some people, if they say something that's wrong, and then you try to correct them later on, they say, well, no, I didn't say that. Their mind has to disassociate. Or you go on a trip and you remember the good things but forget the bad things. Okay, this is disassociation. The mind has a natural ability. Now let's say that you're a soldier in a war, and this has been going on for thousands of years to soldiers in wars. Let's say your buddy, for instance, has his arm blown off and his guts are blown out, and it's a horrible sight. The mind protects itself, and if you look at it on a timeline, and at this point in time is that trauma, if the trauma is severe enough, what the mind does to protect itself, it builds amnesia walls around that trauma. Well, the Illuminati learned this a long time ago, and so what they do is they compartmentalize the mind. They take a small child and they just traumatize the heck out of it and split the mind and build all these amnesia walls between all these traumas. The worse the trauma, the better, because the better the trauma wall. So the most horrendous traumas you can possibly imagine are the ones that they want to use. When you've splintered the mind up into many pieces, of disassociated pieces, then you can go in and pull that piece up to the front of the mind, and you can construct out of that piece of memory whatever you want out of it. And you remember that some people have said that the human mind is like a huge computer, and if you got all the computers of the world together, in some ways your mind would excel. You would be all of the computers in the world. You've got a fantastic computer here. Well, you know how a computer can section off memory. You know, when you turn on your computer, if you need to reboot it, it reboots out of memory that you can't get to. In order to make a functioning computer, the big hurdle that they had to jump over was to be able to create memory that you couldn't access. Well, that's what they're doing with the mind. They're splintering up your memory into thousands of little pieces. My co-author on a couple books on the mind control, her mind was split 30,000 ways. Now, you take those pieces of the mind, yeah, tremendous amount of trauma. Think of the amount of trauma it takes to split the mind and then multiply that times 30,000 times. Tremendous amount of trauma all through these people's lives. So you take that piece and you can make that piece of the mind into anything you want. Now let's say they take one piece and they show up films, and through the programming they make it into a particular personality. Well, what they want to do is they want to make the most perfect front for their slave possible. And so they will test a slave, they will test a victim that they're going to make into a mind-controlled puppet. They'll test them when they're a small child. And I go into the techniques in the book as to how they can test as to what your abilities are. They use EKG tests, and they know how to determine what your abilities are as a small child as to when you would grow up. So they plan out your head, they plan out your life ahead of time. They say, this one will be a doctor, this one will be a lawyer, this one will be a scientist working on rockets, this one will be this one will be that, okay? And depending on what they're wanting you for will determine the type of programming they give you. So it's very systematic, and because the movers and shakers of the world have all of the resources, basically, they can move these people into whatever field they decide for them, so they become the top of their field. Now their front personalities are very legitimate, sincere people. They don't know about the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde effect. Imagine yourself being a Christian minister and horrors of horrors finding out that you've got disassociated parts of yourself that are Satanists, that are satanic, that go to Illuminati rituals. We recently had a minister fly in with his wife. He heard me speaking last summer on my lecture circuit, and when he heard me talk about the Illuminati, he realized there's nobody else that understands the Illuminati or the type of programming I have that can help me. There are very few people out there that understand this. That's why he came to visit us. That's one reason why I needed to talk to your people, Dean, about the Illuminati, is because since we have been here in this conference, there have been a number of people that have come up that have discovered that they have this kind of programming. They've come, they've gotten our material just since we have come to this conference. And there's other people probably that will learn it too. And so it gives people that are victims of this some confidence that there's somebody out there that will understand them when they hear that there's a few people like myself that really understand in depth what the Illuminati is all about. Now, this is comes from a book. I took it from somebody else's book, but this is somebody who's trying to develop artificial intelligence for computers. He's extremely brilliant. He understands the mind perhaps better than anybody, and he's showing the processes of memory and motivation. And I'm just throwing these diagrams up to you to show you that the natural mind is not one monolithic thing, but it's many components. And the Illuminati understand what those components are and how to divide the mind from itself and how to control those processes. For instance, if you electroshock somebody, you destroy their short-term memory for about 24 hours. So every time that Cisco was used for some purpose, let's say she was running drugs for them, or being used as a sexual slave, or whatever they were using her for, on a daily basis practically, they would electroshock her. What that would do is splinter your short-term memory. Once they get you programmed to where they want you, then they will delete your memory of having been used in these things. People that are on sensitive in government projects, if you are in charge of something that takes a classification, you're going to be under mind control. Don't you think that they're smart enough to want to control their secrets? And this was taken at Bethesda, which happens to be a programming center, but it's showing the brain's PT scans of multiples. And you'll see that from when one